I have one Michael here, Flesh of the Father. Today I want to talk about one of Jesus Christ's most important teachings, and that is to take the speck out of your own eye before you try and take it out of your brother's eye. Let's go. Okay, so I'm doing this video because I think this is probably one of Jesus' most relevant teachings for our modern times. And what I'm essentially getting at is most people in our modern world are completely and utterly hypocritical. And they love to criticize others but not realizing that they have a speck in their own eye. And let me give you some examples of what I'm talking about. One example, a classic one recently, is Kanye West. Kanye West is coming out with his Hail Hitler song, and he's just trying to be controversial. And obviously, Kanye West also has a problem with the Jews. And Kanye West doesn't really like Hitler. His position is based on the fact that he hates the Jews because he believes that they run Hollywood and certain industries, and he's basically upset because he hasn't gained even more success in the music and clothing industry. Because I'm sure Jesus Christ would be totally obsessed with Kanye having more money and a bigger clothing line. And whilst I think these sort of theories are way overblown and a lot of them are false based on the fact that in Christianity and Islam the Jews are made to seem the bad guys, and obviously the fact that Jews got involved in banking, they have a bad reputation. And I personally believe that a lot of it, the religious stuff, is completely nonsense. And whilst there are absolutely a lot of Jewish people in high positions of power, I don't believe that necessarily there's some grand conspiracy. But when it comes to Kanye, and the topic of this video is, let's say that even if Kanye West was right, is he setting the right example? You know, I've heard Kanye West say things about, the Jews are responsible for porn. Yet Kanye West walks around with his wife naked. And he was even posting pornography on certain platforms, as far as I'm aware. So are you setting the example? As Jesus said, Jesus would say to Kanye West, hold on, even though you're wrong, even if you were right, you're a complete hypocrite. Take the speck out of your own eye before you criticize others. And it's the same with a lot of the Catholics, like Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes. They're another group of people who are obsessed with hating the Jews. And it all stems from being in the Catholic teachings, the Jews are seen as the synagogue of Satan. And again, that's another complete and utter lie made up from Christian religion. It's the idea that the Jews killed Jesus, and therefore the Jews are evil and they're blinded and all this stuff. A load of rubbish. And it also goes on to the fact that there's a lot of Jewish power and the AIPAC and the Israel lobby and all this stuff. And there may be some issues that I agree with, that, Israel shouldn't have certain authority in America or certain powers. No other nation should. So they may have points. But what I would say to Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, all the Catholics is, hold on a second, take the speck out of your own eye. Let's look at the Catholic Church. One thing they complain about is, the refugees and all that stuff. When I looked into it, a lot of the NGOs are Christian NGOs, and the Catholic Church have been promoting open borders. Now, even the Church of England have been promoting open borders. So you're criticising, the Jews are flooding the country with refugees, yet your Catholic Christian religion and church are doing exactly the same. So who are you? You're hypocrites. You're a Catholic, you support the Catholic Church, they're doing it. Get your house in order before you go and criticise others. And from there, we also have a lot of red pill community of males who are waking up to female nature and are hating women. And again, whilst they may have a lot of relevant points of that the modern woman has fallen into the fleshly lust and female nature has been revealed, or the dark side of female nature. What a lot of these men do is they spend their time slagging off women, but again, have you taken a thorn out of your own eye? You haven't overcome the dark side of your male nature. You're still complete and utter sexual perverts, and you haven't taken the speck out of your own eye. So you're spending your time moaning about female nature and the bad side of that, but you haven't overcome your dark male nature of being a complete sexual pervert. And their anger about women comes not from any noble position, but it comes from a place of, oh, I can't get enough sex because they only go for the top 10% of men. Or, I got married and I don't get enough sex. You're still a perverted man and you haven't overcome your male nature. The interesting thing is, once you overcome your male nature, the dark male nature that you have, obsessed with sex, and you return to the spirit and you value your woman as a daughter of God, you'll attract a right quality woman, and then you won't be complaining. So if there are men who are noble men who have overcome their fleshly desires, and they may talk about the bad side of female nature, then they're righteous and they have every right to. But if you're still a pervert and your protestations come because you're an incel, or you can't get enough sex, or your wife is no longer having as much sex as you want, then you haven't taken the speck out of your own eye. And it works the other way around. A lot of these feminists spend all their time slagging off men, but in a similar way, women haven't overcome themselves. They haven't overcome their female nature and returned to Christ. And again, once these women who criticize men do what needs to be done and return to Christ, they'll attract a noble man of Christ. And then when a noble man of Christ and a noble woman of Christ meet together and they've taken the speck out their own eye, they're no longer hypocrites. That's when the magic happens. And then they'll have children and they'll raise noble children. And then society will become great again. And another example is I'm from the UK, everybody in our country knows that Britain is broken. And one of the big problems we have is illegal migration, and our government's also importing legal migrants who shouldn't really be here and don't provide value. And it's an absolutely correct argument that, especially like the illegals, we've got all sorts of weirdos who we don't know if they could be murderers, rapists, coming into our country. And British people have every right to complain about the problems. But we also need to look in the mirror, look at the state of our country and our people. Whilst there may be a load of weirdos on the streets, on the videos you see of like foreigners just doing all sorts of weird stuff, a lot of the English are druggies, are drunks. They're acting like degenerates. In our country, we have young women like, what's her name? Bonnie Blue, sleeping with hundreds of men for clout, total degeneracy. Our role models for our children are people like Andrew Tate, total morons, materialists. And everybody's obsessed with sports and materialism rather than anything spiritual. If you talk about anything spiritual, people aren't really interested. And as an English people, before we overly criticize all these illegals coming in, we need to get our house in order. If our house was in order, we wouldn't have these problems. If we didn't turn away from the Spirit of God, we wouldn't have been invaded by hordes of illegals, because we would have had noble leaders. But because we've become corrupted, we've allowed weak leaders to take over, and our country is going to hell in a handbasket. And before our country can be saved, we need to restore our own people first and take the speck out of our own eye and sort our people out first. And then once we do that, everything else will fall into place. Okay, so that's the point of my video today, is I'm saying you can listen to people who are righteous. Like Christ had every right to criticize other people because he was of the right nature. But if people are being hypocrites, they're not worthy of listening. I'm not going to listen to Kanye West or Candace Owens or Andrew Tate or any of these people because they're losers and hypocrites. I will follow the likes of Jesus Christ, the likes of Gautama Buddha, the likes of Roy Masters, and other people who follow the likes of Jesus. And if you're a man and you want to take advice on how to get women, take advice from men who are in successful, godly marriages, not from a bunch of influencers who are not married, who don't know how to treat women. It makes no sense. Okay, so that's the point of my video today. Usual stuff, like the video if you like it, share it with as many people as you can, subscribe if you're new, and God bless everybody. Goodbye.